In this example, I want to go ahead and take a look at how we'll use SwiftUI to build out a sample application. So in this application, I want to build out a to-do list where we have basically just to-do tasks. But what's different about this is I want to set up event handlers for these to-dos so that we can add new to-dos to our list and we can delete to-dos from our list. So a full-scale application and how those event handlers fit into SwiftUI is kind of what we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new Xcode project, and I'm going to call it to-do list, and I'm just going to save it on my desktop. And the idea here is that I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the canvas, and I'm going to get rid of the right window, and I'll get rid of the comments just to kind of clean things up. I'm going to start with a model that is a to-do item. So I'm going to create a new group called models, and then I'm going to add a new file which will be a struct, which will be our model for our to-do. And since I know that I'm going to build a list of to-dos, I know that I'm going to have to implement the identifiable protocol. So I'm going to have a struct called to-do that implements that identifiable protocol. This is very common in SwiftUI. And then the first thing I'm going to do then is I'm going to have an ID equal to the UUID. Okay, and then to kind of keep this simple, I'm just going to go ahead and have a description of the to-do, which will be a string. Okay, so that's the extent of our model class. So very straightforward, just an ID and a description, and that's what we want to carry over to our application. We want to be able to create instances of these and manage those instances in a list so that we can delete them. Okay, so in our content view, we are not going to have text. What we want to do is we want to create a list of, so let me go ahead and leave text in there for the time being. What we want to do is we want to have a collection of those to-do items. So I'm going to go ahead and have a variable called to-dos, which will be an array of those to-do objects that we just created. Okay, and this list of to-dos should really be the list that we're displaying in our body. So I'm going to go ahead and have a list. And the idea is that there's going to be a to-do in self.todos. And then I should be able to display that to-do description. So I'm just going to go ahead and use text to-do.description. And right now it's an empty array, so our list shouldn't be very interesting. Why am I getting that? I want a list of self.todos and then to-do in. So my syntax was just off. Okay, and then if I want, I should be able to bring up the canvas, and I should be able to preview this. Although the preview won't be very exciting, the preview is just going to be an empty list. But you can see that it's building now, and the idea would be that I have that SwiftUI list. Okay, so it says it's paused, we're resuming it. Not very exciting. It's an empty list. Ultimately, what I want to do is I want to be able to add new to-dos to this array. So in order to do that, what I want to do is I want to have a text field that's going to allow the user to do that. So at the top of the screen, I want a text field, and then in the bottom of the screen, I want to display all of the to-dos. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to have a vertical stack, and the list will be in it. and also that text field will be in it. And the way the text field works is I'm going to have kind of a user prompt. Enter new to-do here. And then the text inside of it is actually going to be my new to-do. So what I want to do is I actually want to take that and bind it to a state variable. So I'm going to have a state variable. So I'm going to say that the text is actually equal to that bound variable, new to do. Okay, and then lastly, what I can do is, what I want to do is I want to basically take whatever the user enters in this text field, and I want to allow the user to add that as a new to do. So I'm going to set up a new event handler, which is going to be on commit. And I'm just going to set it up to an event that I don't have yet, which is going to be add to do. Okay, so it's going to complain saying add to do doesn't exist because that function doesn't exist, but I'm going to go ahead and add that function. So I'll have that private func add to do. Okay, and the idea here is that all we're going to do is we're going to append that new to do. So we're going to go to to-dos, we'll append a new element, which is a new to-do, so we'll create an instance of a to-do, and the description is going to come from our state variable, the new to-do. And then lastly, what I want to do is the new to-do should be equal to an empty string, so I'll clear out that text field. And so what I want to do is, it's complaining about the to-dos. The to-dos is actually bound to that list as well, so ultimately what I want to do is make that a state variable as well. And I think that should allow that to be mutating, meaning I can update it, otherwise it creates a non-mutating variable. Okay, so now if I try this again, what we should see is our text here where we can enter a new to-do, and I actually have to come down and run this if I want to be able to actually type here. Okay, so this is my text field, and what'll happen is when I hit enter, that's the on commit, it's going to run this add to do function, and it should add it to our list, and then we should see this task in our list. Okay, so the on commit event right here is actually triggering this function definition. The function definition is grabbing the new to do, which is the text, and appending it to our list, and our list is bound to the self.todos. Okay, so we have that state variable that's getting bound to our list. Okay, so fairly rapidly we can build this out. One other thing that I might want to do is I might want to say that I'm going to have some padding so that this enter new to do is offset from the left edge a little bit. So now we could do something like walk the dog, feed the dog. Okay, and now ideally what I'd like to do is I'd like to be able to delete these fields. So kind of my initial reaction when I'm building this out is, okay, I want to be able to delete those things. Maybe I want the text and then a spacer and then a button text delete, and then some kind of closure where I actually remove that. And then what you'll see is that if I bring the canvas back up, it looks kind of correct. So if I say walk the dog. Okay, but the way Swift works and the way iOS devices work is if I want to delete, what I really want to do is I want to be able to swipe from the side. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm going to break out of this list. So I have the list, which is fine. It's not an issue. But ultimately what I want to do is I want to have a for each loop. And then I should be, well, actually, I think I can do it on the list. So I can say on delete. So on delete, what I want to do is I want to perform the delete to do. Okay, and what the on delete will do is it'll say, okay, you're swiping, now what should happen? But this delete to do has to match a specific function signature. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to add that specific function signature. So private func delete to do. And the way the delete to do works is it is going to trigger the offsets. It's basically going to give you an index set. So the signature is add offsets, which is going to give me an index set. And then what I can do is I can use self.todos.remove add offsets, and then I'm passing in my variable offsets. Okay, it's complaining. Value of type list has no member on delete. The on delete actually has to be not on a list. So what ends up happening is we will wrap the list up like this. And I still want to have kind of the same stuff that we did before, but instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this in a for each. And the for each is where the on delete actually resides. That's what I was thinking at the beginning. And then since we're doing that, we no longer need this button that's going to perform the delete. And we no longer need the spacer. So what we really need is just the for each that's going to have the text. Okay, so I kind of cleaned that up haphazardly, but what you see is I have a list, and in the list we're going to go through each of the to-dos, essentially like we were doing before, but now I have it attached to the for each. And now for each one of those items has an on delete, not on the whole list itself, where we can delete a to-do, which is going to allow us to swipe. And when we swipe, it's going to trigger the delete to-do method, which is going to pass in an index set. We're only deleting one at a time anyway. But ultimately, what that'll do is it'll allow us to remove tasks from our list. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick iPhone 11. And I'm going to run the application as opposed to running it through the canvas. So it's going to take a second to bring up the iPhone 11 simulator, but the idea here is that we'll have two event handlers now set up. So we have the on commit set up, where we're triggering the add to do, and then we also have the on delete, where we're performing the delete to do, and these are the two event handlers. Okay, so we should be able to add a new event or a new to do. So walk the dog, eat pizza, watch TV. Okay, and I decide I don't want to eat pizza, so I'm going to swipe. So I can stop there, and you'll see that it brings up the delete command, and I can click on that button, which will then remove the eat pizza. If I swipe hard enough, then eventually I can just get it to go away without having to click the button. So I'm swiping, that brings up the delete, but there is a swipe action where like, it won't actually bring up the delete. It'll just swipe that off, and it'll remove it automatically. Okay, so this is just kind of a simple to-do list that we're building out, but the idea is that we can actually get fairly powerful results for our to-do list. If I wanted to expand on this, so let's say I wanted to expand on this, what I can do is I could say I want this to have a context menu. And you can see what happens is I get a collection of context menu items. So let's assume that I wanted to be able to do two things with each of these to-dos. One is that I want to be able to complete them, and I don't have a good action, so right now our model is not very sophisticated. It's just an ID and a description. But let's say our to-do model became more sophisticated, like maybe we have a field for is it complete or not, so a state. And maybe the state is even more complicated than it's complete. Maybe I want to snooze on it because I'm waiting additional information. I might want a timestamp of when things changed. So really I might want this as like a task manager or project task manager. I don't necessarily want to modify the model, but what I want to do is if I go over to the content view, I have this context menu. And I'll just show you it as is. So all I did is hit dot context menu and this automatically popped in the text. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. So what's going to happen is I'm going to enter walk the dog. And now if I do a long press, it brings up that context menu. And the context menu is right now just text, menu item 1, 2, 3. Maybe I want to have some text like, what would you like to do? And then instead of text, what I want to do is I want to have a button. And the button is either going to be mark something as complete. So I'm going to go up to edit and I'm going to go to emojis. And I want to use like a check mark. So this check mark, I'm just going to go ahead and insert that. And then it's going to perform an action. So that's my first button. And then the second button, this text right here, instead of menu item 3, I want to sleep on it. So I'm just doing a search for sleep. And again, going to perform an action, but we're converting that to a button. And the idea would be that if I check this, I'm just going to print task is now complete and sleeping on the task. Okay, so now if I run this, what's going to happen is I have a context menu that's actually going to allow me to work with these objects. So walk the dog, I have a task, and you'll see that I can then click on those buttons and have a response. So that event handler is getting triggered. And again, mark as complete, snooze on task. And then we get a little bit more detail. So walk, and I'm just long pressing so I can mark something as complete. I can snooze on the task. If I click off of the context menu automatically is dismissed. So that's just kind of a cool behavior that you're getting. So really the purpose of this demo was to get into SwiftUI and build out kind of a full-scale application, but more specifically, we're looking at how do I attach event handlers to SwiftUI user interface elements. Okay, so at this point we have a couple of SwiftUI event handlers like onCommit, onDelete, but then we also have some buttons that are going to trigger actions using event handling closures. So we're just printing. We're not actually marking anything as complete or snoozing, but the idea is the same. Okay, so really I just wanted to do a quick demo of SwiftUI event handlers.